Today's inspiration is this beautiful fringe crop top. Welcome back, my dear fashionista, to Yvonne Winifred UG. Starting off, I have my front piece and my back piece folded into two. So now we have four parts because each is folded into two, so I'll be dividing all my horizontal measurements by 4. So starting off, on top here, I've already marked our starting point and I left an allowance on top. And from that starting point, I'm going down by 10.5 inches to mark the bust line or the bust point. So it is that line. And the full length of this top will be 19 inches. I added 1 inch for the hemline allowance or the hemming allowance. So the shoulder I'm using is 15 inches. Dividing it by 2, I get 7.5, but I'll be using sleeves, so I added half an inch and I marked 8 on top here. So guys, front and back is similar. I won't be using any zipper allowance. So I'm marking also the neckline width, which is 3.5 inches. And since the shoulder of a human being is never straight, I'm slanting it down by 1 inch, and I connect from that 1 inch back to the neckline width like that. And guys, I have to cross check my shoulder measurement of the 8 inches on this new shoulder line like that. So from that shoulder line where it ended, I'm going down by half of the armhole measurement, which is 8.5 inches. Armhole measurement being 17 inches. I just marked its half. So the shoulder line and this armhole measurement or chest line is parallel. So I have to mark the 8 inches also, and where the 8 inches ended at this chest line, I connected back to the shoulder line like that and got the midpoint of this line, which is 4.25, and moved in by half an inch like that to mark the front armhole. So before that, I'm just going to divide the bust measurement by 4, and whatever I got, I added 1 inch sewing allowance and 1 inch as ease allowance because there is no zipper on this top. So at the waistline also here, I'm just going to divide the waist measurement by 4, but I added 1 inch for that and 1 inch sewing allowance and also 1 inch for ease allowance because it is a free top. But if you want it not free, please consider a zipper allowance, maybe on the side or at the back. So now I connected my points, and now I can also mark the rest. So now the nipple to nipple measurement I'm working with is 8 inches. Dividing it by 2, I get 4, but I added half inch as the sewing allowance, and I marked 4.5 inches for both front and back, and I notched it down. And now I can connect my armhole for the front first. So remember we moved inside like by half an inch, so you consider that to mark the front armhole. And for the back, you just start from the midpoint of the armhole line into the chest line like this. So now that's what we have. So for the neckline depth, I considered 4.5 inches for the front and 2 inches for the back. That is because I have no zipper allowance, so I have to make my neckline a little bit wide so that I can pass the head. So I connected with curves like that, and I added half an inch at the shoulder slant as the sewing allowance like that, and connected like that. So now we are free to cut it out. So guys, for the front dart, it will end 1 inch below this bust line, and also for the back it will just go 1 inch above the bust line. So now let's cut it out. We start with the back markings first as you are cutting. So that is along the armhole and at the neckline. And after I separate the two and I finish up with the front markings simply like that at the armhole and also along the neckline. So now this is what we have front, and the other is the back. So behind camera or off camera, I also cut some lining pieces, and also this other piece that I have here is going to be for the sleeves. So let's put this aside and start cutting the sleeves. So I'll need 2 sleeves. That's why I'm folding into 2 like this. So the length for my sleeves is 7 inches, but I added 2 inches as the allowance. So guys, from the top here, I just marked down 4 inches as the cap's height, and it is gotten by dividing the bust measurement by 3 inches plus half an inch. So now after that, I just marked half of the armhole measurement that we are using, which is 8.5 inches, and then drew a diagonal line from the 8.5 inches coming up here at the corner, and along that diagonal line I just marked its midpoint, and at its midpoint I went up by half an inch. So now with that half an inch, I'm just going to carve out the back armhole curve like that into the full length or width. Then also at that midpoint, I'm marking the front armhole like that also. So after this, you have to consider your sewing allowances. So I added, remember we have 1 inch sewing allowance, 1 inch is allowance. So guys, at the full length here, I'm using 6.5 inches and the 2 inches as the allowances. So I connected like that, and now I am free to cut it out. So I'm just going to start cutting the back armhole curve. As I stated at first, you know, it is on top like that, and now this gives me my 2 sleeves. So I notch out their midpoint, so now there are 2 sleeves. So I'm going to open them up like this and make sure right side is facing the right side like that, and this is going to be for the back. And I'm now going to cut out the front armhole curve on one side of the 2 sleeves. So now that is what we have. One side is back and the other is for the front. So now guys, for the fringes, I just considered off the sewing allowances from the side, about 2 to 3 inches. Remember, we also have that. So now from that allowance, I marked 1 inch that will be for the fringe, and then another 1 inch that will be for the spacing between the fringes. So I considered that, and I went and cut out all my fringes. So remember, we have for 2 sides of front and back, and also left and right side for each. So for each fringe, I'm considering about 3 inches for each fringe, but it will be later folded into 2, and then the full like this, folded into 2 like this, so that I sew it up. I will close up one side, and the other side I will leave one side open, you know, one opening open. hope you understand. So I came up with all these fringes. There were about 20 of them, and I only considered the fringes only along the hemline of the top. I didn't add fringes at the sleeves. So at this point, I've finished taking in my dart. That is front and back, and also at the linings. So now this is also how the back looks like. So moving on, let me show you how I got these fringes. So after sewing, closing up the sides, this side that was closed up, I just pushed it inside and used my scissor to flip it onto the right side like this, and then use the pin to, you know, push out the corners straight like that. So that is how I came up with all these fringes. So if you want them longer, guys, consider that. If you want them a little bit smaller, also consider that. So now this is how I'm going to pin them down, taking off the sewing allowance about 2 inches. I'm going to pin it down like this, right onto the right side, and then I'll bring the other fringe also and leave about 1 inch in between the 2 fringes, then pin down the other fringe like this, and also again leave 1 inch. So I'll do that for all the fringes. I'll be leaving 1 inch as the space in between the fringes, and then pin down up to the other side, that is for both front and back. And then I have to make sure that it comes out like this. So you have to leave the sewing space on the side and the ease allowance that we added. So after, I'll just bring my lining, put it on top of this main piece, that is right sides facing each other. So I'll just pin it down and start sewing from the sides, going down by 1/2 inch and even along the hemline onto the other side. And also, guys, I'll finish up along the neckline by 1/2 inch like that, and I'll just take it to the right side through the armhole, and this is what we have. So you can give it a good pressing with your iron, and this is what we have. So guys, also this is how it looks like from the inside, and also the back looks like this. So at this point, you have to notch the corners so that when you flip it onto the right side, it is so flat and correct, even along the neckline. So flipping it to the right side through the armhole openings, this is what we have for the back. I even remained with some fringes, there were really many. So now I'm just going to put my front and back right side facing each other, and then sew at the shoulder, you know, finish up the shoulder. I'll just pin them down like this, right side facing each other, that is lining to lining and main fabric to main fabric, and sew by 1/2 inch. And then I'll hem my sleeve by double folding by 1/2 inch, attach it to the top, and then finish up the side, and this is what I got. So it is a simple stylish top that you can make. You can make yours boxy if you don't want darts, and you can also add darts just as I did. And these are the fringes. You can make them a little bit longer or smaller in size. You can add fringes along your sleeves, but I didn't do that, but it's the same method as we used. And this is how the back looks like. So guys, thank you so much for watching. If you've liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll be making more other videos for you. And if you are new, don't forget to subscribe to Yvonne Winfrey UG and share this video.